Yo, yo, yo. What up, everybody? Mr. Phil Fox, Drops of Hope Ministries. My man CMB Baby in the house. We are going to be talking Matt Walsh and colonialism was noble? Coming at you. Yo, 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 yo. My man CMB in the house. CMB, how you be, my brother?
Man, I'll be all right. Mr. Phil Fox. How you doing, brother?
Good. Well, I mean, sort of good. We gotta deal with this nonsensical nonsense.
Yes.
By Matt Walsh.
And before we get going, can I thank you for raising my blood pressure this evening? I just appreciate that.
Well, it's not me. It's not me. It was actually our dear brother who just messaged and asked for the link. So my assumption that he is on the way. MJ Jackson actually was the one who he says, and I'll sort of let him tell his side of the story, but he said that he wasn't going to do anything or say anything about this, and he was sitting on it for a couple days. But I did the response to the Pope and the Vatican on their repudiation of the doctrine of discovery, and I made a comment somewhere in the back chat about MJ made me do it, so therefore he wanted to enact some more violence.
Of course. MJ, what? What'd you say?
So MJ. Yes, so MJ Violence Jackson is the guy. And speaking of MJ Violence Jackson, this is the man himself.
Speak of the devil.
Hey, bro, you hear us talking bad about you, bro? Like a dog.
Woo! And then shortly, we should hopefully, Lord willing, be joined by our brother apologist in Detroit in a little bit here. He's out running some errands. But before we get too far, definitely going to do some shout outs here. Mary Myers, good to see you. Joel, good to see you. Mr. Green, yeah, how you doing, Green? And then our sister Michelle Turner, good to see y'all. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. And I see that there's folks coming in. And thank you for the land acknowledgement, Mary. Awesome. And with that, I would also like, before we get too far, like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the lands of the Anishinaabe and the Potawatomi in their ancestral lands. And I want to thank them for their stewardship of these lands. And it's an honor to be living in these lands. Now, I am not Potawatomi or Anishinaabe. I am part of the MHA Nation, the great MHA Nation, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and the Rikara Nation. I am a low-cap and a chicken clan child. So shout out to my homelands, my people. And yeah, man. Oh, praise. Wow.
Hey, wow.
Charles, all the way from India, man. Hey. That is awesome. Worldwide, prestige, worldwide, wide.
Yes, sir.
So brothers, we were just sort of talking and joking earlier how we attained the copy of this information and the stuff that we got. But it's a very serious topic. And shout out to my wife, Ashley, because I wasn't actually going to really do anything with this until maybe later next week. And oh man, here we go. Our brother BK apologist.
Yes,
wow.
What
Yo,
up?
What's good?
What is good, my Taino brother?
Got a Taino Indian up in the house.
Yeah, CMB2, baby.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I also blame MJ for what's about to transpire.
The First Nations people is up in here.
Yes. Yes. So, so to sort of set up a little bit, go ahead, MJ.
Before you set up, can I defend myself a little bit?
No,
Not
no,
even-
not at all. Not one bit. Mute him, Phil. Mute him.
Go
Phil,
ahead,
you
MJ.
you go ahead. I'm not even going to defend myself.
You can't. That's what you just can't,
You
MJ.
just cannot. Yeah, so I wasn't gonna do anything, but my I showed the clip to my wife, and she was like livid that we didn't deal with this yet. So she said, "Hey, you need to see if the fellas are available, and you guys need to do something today." So I got it together, and praise God that my brothers were able to hop on today. So I appreciate y'all for that. but yeah, so as we set up, if you're not familiar with who Matt Walsh is a conservative commentator. He's part of the Daily Wire group. And Daily Wire is, they're famous for some folks, and they just acquired it. It looks like they just acquired Jordan Peterson. He's doing like a series on their platform as well. Let's see. Yeah, okay. I was looking at the back chat. So anyway, yeah. So they have, and their main person that they have at Daily Wire is Ben Shapiro, who's their super conservative talking head. Super quick on the trigger and all that kind of stuff. All the Ben Shapiro takedown videos. But also, to add some diversity to there, they have Candace Owens, who's their house blank. Anyway, to help them sort of galvanize themselves, and then also, they have the likes of Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, who is Jewish and all those things. So it's it's a very quote unquote diverse. Yeah, we were just actually wondering something like this in the back before we got started, and we thought that Walsh was at least had some religious affiliation, so didn't realize it was Catholic. So that would explain quite a bit.
Yep.
So anyway, before we get started, does anybody have any opening statements as far as what we're about to get into here? Because it is pretty bad.
I said it offline. I'm gonna say it online now. As I would agree with some things when you talked about what is woman, the logic and the the intentionality of the argumentation and the logical arguments and stuff like that was very good. And as good as that it was, the argumentation and the logic that he's using to justify this stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is just as bad. So it is completely either end of the spectrum, and I'm kind of frankly disappointed, to be honest with you, but it is what it is.
Right.
For all of the finger pointing at the left in terms of the postmodernism that these guys will point that the left engages in, when it comes to this subject right here, here's your postmodernism right here, because they don't hold people like Walsh and those who will often say, well, history is complex. That's often the deflection or the excuse that we hear is history is complex. Well, no, if you can clearly lay out the absurdities of the left, you should be able to do the same thing with the right. And I would just submit that there is two, not to get ahead, and I'm going to hold off on that comment that I was going to make, but I'm just going to say, when you have to go through this much, this many hoops of twisting history and twisting morality, you have this is idolatry,
right,
at work, on display for everyone to see. This is idolatry.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'll say this. So, you know, as MJ said, me being Puerto Rican, I'm Taino, right, which derives from the Arawak people, and before it was called Puerto Rico, it was called Borinquen, right? And my island is called a Commonwealth,
Mm,
which is basically a soft way of saying colony.
right.
So when I saw what this individual was saying, it really resonated with me
Hmm.
because my people are still in that format to a certain extent,
Right.
and and that's all I want to say. Like, so because of my context,
Right.
it does hit me a certain way. So I'll have more to say later.
All right.
Can I just piggyback on that as well
Mhm.
too, right?
Go
So,
ahead.
for those who don't know, my family is Jamaican, right? And my on my grandmother's side, we descend from what is now known as the Maroon Indians. So the same Arawak people groups that inhabited the islands, and Tainos that inhabited the islands in Puerto Rico, Cuba, Hispaniola, etc. Same people groups were colonized, or they were colonized in Jamaica by multiple people. First the Spanish came, and then the British came, and then so there's a lot of influence there. So there's been indentured servants from different places, like slaves from different places, or whatever the case is. Just so it's a mishmash of people, which is why the Jamaican coat of arms, you will see it says "out of many, one people," right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of how that is, and to this day, on the Jamaican coat of arms, it has two Taino people or Arawak people, First Nations, that are represented there, men and women that are represented there, and some of the wildlife. So that's on our coat of arms. It is very much in our heritage, and it's very much in my bloodline. So I feel I feel on
Facts.
some things
Facts.
in some ways, and as I
Mhm.
feel, Fredo and I, BK apologists, we share the same bloodline in that
Yeah.
sense. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Facts.
Awesome. And then also now joining the stream is our brother, apologist in Detroit. Apologist in Detroit, what's good?
I made it. Yay.
What up,
No,
though?
man. No, I'm good, man. It's just been, it's weird because like, man, the last month and a half, my schedule just been crazy busy. I think I've been working like 50, 60 hours a week, and I gotta find some time to Sabbath. I got my vacation coming up, Lord willing. I'm gonna have a really good time of restoration then. Man, it was a good time this morning. I'm pretty sure you mentioned that already. I had some other good news. I got my new book in the mail today.
Nice.
Boom.
Jelly.
Don't even come out to June. But I got my
Man.
copy early somehow. Don't know how.
kidding.
Hold
And
on.
then
What you got? Oh, I was about to say.
Yes,
Dr.
sir. Shout out to
Dr.
Dr.
Imes' new
Yeah.
book on bearing God's image. And so
I want that book too, but I thought you had some other books that we waiting on. I was about to be hating.
no, hey, you on the what's name? A Burning House? I got that too.
I've been having some issues. I'm gonna talk to you on the back end. I'm having some
Okay.
technical difficulties.
Oh yeah, because I had a technical issue getting it set up on my Kindle too. But now I got it set up. It's
Yeah,
smooth.
you just gotta add your Kindle email
to
yep.
And
to
you
the
got to
website.
add that. You got to add their website to your Kindle, so
Yep.
it knows it knows and is willing to accept it. And so anyway, I got it figured out. It took me like a day or two to get it straightened out after I put the wrong email address in there.
Yep,
Gotcha.
I did the same thing too.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I was hating for a second.
No, it's all good.
Forgive me, brother, for being a hater.
Yeah, but yeah, unfortunately, I did not mention Chris what happened this morning. But yeah, so Chris, apologist in Detroit, and Des Ingram just completely knocked it out the park this morning at Apologetics Conference here in Detroit at Power, Hope, and Grace, co-hosted by Elder
Walking on Water.
Yeah, co-hosted by Walking on Water, but Elder Wingate at Power, Hope, and Grace Bible Church, and Elder and Pastor Mike Holloway from Walking on Water Bible Church. So absolutely amazing information. Chris killed it, and so did Des. So very practical, but very insightful as well. So
real quick, and so I left there, and I had the outreach because we were sponsoring laundry at the laundromat this afternoon as an outreach and inviting people to church on this upcoming Sunday and Easter Sunday. And guess what happened? Some guy, young guy, he's 20 years old, comes walking over to me, and he's got on an ankh, and I go, "Do you know what that is?" And he is like, "Yeah, I'm a Kemeticist." And he was a Moor. And so I spent
Medicine
the next,
more? Wow. Okay.
yes,
On
it was
either side
crazy.
of the
I do,
continent, but
man.
okay, whatever.
It was crazy. I was talking to him and his boy, and both of them were like super zealous, and was talking to them for like an hour and a half, hour and a half, trying to get them to kind of like realize, like, you keep saying that you believe in truth, but then you keep talking about truth, and then when we had the conversation about truth, like subjective truth versus objective truth, you said objective truth, but then you keep talking this subjective stuff, and I keep pointing back like, but you said objective truth, and there's a contradiction here. There's a contradiction. Like, everybody is not God, buddy. Everybody doesn't have the God. Oh, the spirit means breath. The breath is, anyway. It was interesting, to say the least. Yeah, hour and a half.
Well, praise God for that, man.
Yeah.
Hope there's some breakthrough there. Definitely got to keep him in your prayers, guys. Because that's important stuff. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so let's get into this. But Dana Owens, good to see you. Shotty Mills, sis, good to see you. Who else? Will, good to see you, man. Appreciate y'all stopping by.
I just want to let Chris know that they threw me under the bus before you jumped on her.
We was telling the truth. No throwing nobody no bus.
Big brother gets here, so you tattletale.
You know what I mean?
They threw me under the bus and then backed up, put it in reverse. But I digress. Go ahead, my brother.
I'll be honest, there's a couple times we ran over you, bro.
Hey, man, that's the thing is MJ done lays down in front of the bus and then asks,
says, "Please roll over me."
Yeah, for real. That's exactly what happens. All right, here we go. We're gonna look at this trash video. So setting this up. So Matt Walsh is in his final segment of his video that happened. It's I think late last week, or maybe first part of last week. Anyway, it's the first. Here's the title up here. And I better just make sure before we get to this, this is fair use. So that way we don't get into the copyright stuff. So this is for learning, teaching, and critique. So that's what this video is and how we're going to use it tonight. So again, this is his last segment, and it is called Anti-colonialists Are Canceled. So here we go. Can you hear that? Didn't hear it?
No, I can't hear it, bro.
No, can't hear it.
All right. So let me go back.
Are you a subscriber to their content?
No.
Okay.
No. Would not do that.
MJ is though. That's how you got it.
I might be, man. I've watched a few different channels.
All right, here, let's.
Today for our daily cancellation, we move from.
Here at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
All right, daily cancellation. Here we go. And so we'll just sort of let it play until somebody gives me just gives me a shout, unmute yourself, because it's kind of hard to see with all of us here. So if I just see a hand or whatever, but just go. So people in the chat, Matt Walsh, we do not support any of the stuff that he says here. So just FYI.
Problematic gifts to something a bit more familiar, which is problematic team mascots, or in this case, team nicknames. The New York Times reports, quote, George Washington University will soon choose a new nickname for its athletic teams, dropping colonials after a year of pressure from students who said the name was entangled with violence toward Native Americans and other colonized people. The campus community in the heart of the nation's capital has narrowed a list of 10 replacement candidates to 4 finalists, which are ambassadors, blue fog, revolutionaries, and sentinels. Well, just a side note here, it's a good thing that names like revolutionaries and sentinels don't have anything to do with violence. That's really good. Personally, I think blue fog is the best option. It would be quite appropriate to take away the name colonials, which is something solid and meaningful, and replace it literally with fog. Something hazy, amorphous, undefined. It's the only way to avoid offending people. If you choose anything distinct, anything that exists as a definable entity, somebody will find a reason to be upset. Fog is your only choice. But then again, even fog brings to mind a history of racial trauma. After all, the media has been reporting in recent years that fog around the world is declining due to climate change. The website Inside Climate News reported in 2021, quote, with a warming climate, coastal fog around the world is declining. But as we know, climate change somehow impacts racially marginalized communities the most. And nobody knows how that's the case, but that's what they say. And so this makes any mention of fog potentially triggering and problematic. There's really no way out of this bind in a world where everything is racist. The only choice is to choose a team name that doesn't mean anything at all. Just mix up a bunch of like Scrabble tiles and go with whatever gibberish it spells out. So you could be the George Washington Fifth Eternals or the George Washington Ziglabots or whatever. I think this is the only way forward. More from the article. Quote, the university will hear feedback until April 28th through what it is calling Moniker Madness, and a new nickname will be announced by the end of the semester, said Ellen Morin, the university's vice president for communications and marketing. The school's mascot will remain George Washington's head, which a uniformed student wears. The change comes amid a reckoning of the fraught history of team names across the American sports landscape. It comes after a push by students and a victory for Native American activists last year when the National Football League team in Washington became the Commanders, shedding a team name that was a slur against indigenous people. Notice how the old name of the Washington football team now can't even be mentioned in news articles. And this is the case with like any, if you read any article on ESPN that mentions the, something that happened on that team years ago, they won't even say the name. They won't print.
Okay, just real quick. Just notice that he admitted that it's a racial slur against Native people. Okay, carrying on.
The name. But a couple of years ago, they were putting the name on merchandise and selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of it every year. Now you can't even say the name anymore. Or at least I can't. They can't. I mean, I will. The team was called the Washington Redskins for the record and still is called the Washington Redskins as far as, I'm concerned. A little more from the Times. It says, the more we engage and the more we help the community envision what the new moniker options might look like and give the community a chance to try out what the future might
Wait,
look
stop
like.
that. Hold up. Wait. So he admits that it's a racial slur, but he's going to keep saying it as far as he's concerned. Just want to point that out there, Terry.
I'm white, and I say so.
That's bold. It's a racial slur, and I'm still going to say it, even though they've changed the name, because that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
Well, and again, the argumentation that, well, just a couple of years ago they had it, in merchandise and whatever, that didn't make it right then either.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just 40 years ago, we were just
they just freed slaves last year,
Right.
Just a few years ago, we legalized abortion.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You see how dumb that is? Just stupid.
Come on. Do better.
I just want to say, you can look when you don't have anybody challenging you. I mean, and he went on the Dr. Phil channel, but when you don't have anybody challenge you on this stuff and you engage in these monologues, it's easy to talk like you got big pants on. Basically, it's real easy to do that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's easy to talk when you're in a vacuum, right? You're in your echo chamber, right? Nobody's pushing back on your ideas, and yeah, I mean, I applaud him for going on Dr. Phil and actually, having his views, but that was pretty solid. You know what I mean? Like there is some in that respect, I would tend to agree with him on a lot of that stuff. His tactics, maybe not, because some of that has some dehumanization overtones to it, but his overall arguments for that particular subject, what is a woman, I would agree, so, but with this, completely off base. So
yeah, and what you'll see throughout the course of this argumentation is that essentially, and he doesn't say it this way to be fair, but essentially what he's saying is might makes right. This is what we did. This is technology and all this other stuff is coming up. So I don't want to give away too much, but my goodness, might makes right is not the way that you want to go about this. You more often than not, you're going to probably end up on the wrong side of history, but yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, here we go. And so I have it on 1.5 speed. I'll turn it down a little bit when we get to the meat of what we're going to be looking at today. So I'm playing it at 1.5. I'll turn it down to 1.25 when we get to the meat of the stuff we were looking at today. So I just wanted to play this first part to add some context as to where he was headed. So that's why it's playing so fast.
Ms. Morin said, the Colonials name has been part of the university's identity since 1926, replacing the Hatchetites, Hatchetmen, Axemen, and Crummen for Henry Crum, a football coach. Opposition to the Colonials nickname erupted in 2019 when the student body voted to remove it, and the Anything But Colonials Coalition was formed, according to a report a university moniker committee released in 2021. The next year, student organizations delivered a petition to the university president's office seeking a name change. Quote, colonials were active purveyors of colonialism and were complicit in militarized and racialized violence, oppression, and hierarchy, the petition said. Colonialism has been historically and contemporaneously built upon usurping land, labor, and autonomy from racialized communities through dehumanizing violence and suppression. Well, they're right about one thing. Colonials were indeed active purveyors of colonialism. The colonists did live in colonies. Very important insight and observation. The rest of what they said is nonsense. But that's not the really disturbing thing here. The part that disturbs me the most anyway, is when we hear from the defenders of the colonial moniker, the people that want to keep it. This is what they say. Quote, some alumni, however, remain attached to the university's old name, Ms. Morin said. Survey respondents with an affinity for the colonials associated with revolutionary spirit and fighting tyranny, according to a report. Proponents, especially older alumni, have argued that it defines Americans during the British colonial era, said Denver Brunsman, an associate professor of history at the university who's a member of a committee that was formed to discuss the name. Opponents view it as a synonymous with violent colonizers, said Dr. Brunsman, a George Washington scholar. Now, this is the kind of reasoning that we hear a lot, and not just in relation to George Washington University's nickname. From people who are ostensibly taking the rational and correct side of the overall debate, we'll often hear this sort of thing. They'll say, well, you know, when we celebrate and honor the colonists, we're not celebrating colonization. We're celebrating their independence.
You muted it, Phil.
Yeah, I was saying maybe toggling back and forth with the speeds was a bad idea, but we'll see. Maybe let's try to go back. Come on, baby. Computer's working. It's working. It's working.
George Washington University's nickname. For people who are ostensibly taking the rational and correct side of the overall debate, we'll often hear this sort of thing.
All right.
They'll say, well,
Let's try
you know, when we celebrate and honor the colonists, we're not celebrating colonization. We're celebrating their independent spirit and their toughness. That's all. Both sides of the argument seem to have conceded that colonization was in itself a bad thing. We cannot defend colonization in its own right, and so we must defend the people of that era by pointing to the good things they did. But here's the thing. Colonization.
Come on. We might have to leave it out there.
Was a good thing they did. The conquest and colonization and settling of this land.
Okay, let's go back so we can make sure we hear that point again. Sorry for the technical difficulty, folks. My computer should be able to handle this kind of stuff, but I gotta go and get it checked out because I shouldn't be having these buffering issues like this. I should have enough RAM and all that in the queue.
Is this the new computer?
Yeah, this is my new computer. I shouldn't be having these issues. Yeah, it's like quivering.
You want me to play it on my end?
Yeah, you want to try to bring it up?
Yeah, shoot me the video in the private chat and shoot me the timestamp.
Okay. Let's see. And then the timestamp looks like we're at 53:35.
You said 53 what?
35.
53
or
35.
53:30. You can try that.
Yeah, we got to get him.
Yeah, we got to get that. That's going to be a key point. So I'm going to stop that. There we go. 53:30. Just go 53:30. That's good there.
All right, let me know if you can hear it.
Was in itself a bad thing.
You hear it?
We cannot defend colonization in its own right, and so we must defend the people of that era by pointing to the good things they did. But here's the thing. Colonization was a good thing they did. The conquest and colonization and settling of this land was overall a good and noble and courageous thing. It is good that it happened, and we should be. The people who came here and claimed this land were heroes. It was heroic. And they were heroes not because of the other good stuff, but because they came and claimed it. For hundreds of years, this would not have been controversial to say. It would have been perhaps the least controversial thing to say. And now you're not allowed to say it at all. But I will anyway. Now, not all colonization is good. There are evil forms of the practice. For example, the cultural colonization that the left engages in today, when Western governments fly the pride flag on their embassies and try to export the LGBT.
Here you're getting ready to see the hypocrisy. But he says, for hundreds of years, this was a good thing. This is recognized as a good thing. Amongst who?
Right.
I mean, did he ever talk to any black people? Did he ever talk to any Native Americans?
Right.
Did he ever talk to any of our Puerto Rican friends? How about the Hawaiians? Huh?
Ooh,
you don't want to go there, right?
Right.
Here's the thing. This is why it's not fashionable to say this type of crap, because number one, people are becoming a little bit more I want to say literate, historically literate, but let me just go ahead and say woke. How about that? How about that? People are becoming a little bit more woke in the original sense, in the historical sense, in the African American sense. You might not like it, but you have to go through things like this to really destroy or sear over the moral law that God has given us. These are the type of mental gymnastics that you have to engage in to justify this type of crap. Now, notice that he does not give any details of how this land was settled. Conquest. He didn't give any details about it.
Yeah.
He just asserted it was a good thing. Okay.
Right.
In the words of my Calvinist friends, by what standard? I'm done.
Yeah. So here's the, up on the screen, Chief Joseph, or Chief Justice John Marshall. This is how he viewed Native Americans, right? But the tribes of Indians inhabiting this country were fierce savages whose occupation was war and whose substance was drawn chiefly from the forest. To leave them in possession of their country was to leave the country a wilderness. And he actually uses this terminology coming up. So to govern them as distinct people was impossible because they were brave and as high-spirited as they were fierce in there. So at least we got some props, right? And we're ready to repel arms by every attempt on their independence. So a sitting Chief Justice, right? So his justification was this was something that was okay to say stuff like this for the past 200 years, because this is how. And I'm not going to get into this.
Can I say this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, because if anybody would challenge you, you cut their tongue out.
Right. Right. And so he's spouting American exceptionalism. When was America great? I ask. Right. President Andrew Jackson, sitting president, 1833, addresses Congress. Jackson states, the tribes cannot exist surrounded by our settlements, and our continual contact with them, with our citizens is certain. They have neither the intelligence, the industry, the moral habits, nor the desire of improvement, which are essential to any favorable change in their condition. Again, this fiercely sounds like Matt Walsh. I mean, it's like he's
Right.
tearing out these pages and he's reading them. Just
If I
before he
could
came
jump
on
in
air.
real quick.
Go ahead, brother.
So, you know, we always need to define terms, right? So this gentleman, Mr. Walsh, said that colonialism is good. They were heroic. They were heroes, right? Well, what is colonialism, right? So let me give a definition. This is from National Geographic. I don't think they're known for that black militant literature, right? So it says here colonialism is defined as, quote, control by one power over a dependent area or people. It occurs when one nation subjugates another, conquering its population and exploiting it,
Wait,
often
hold.
while forcing its own language and cultural values upon its people. By 1914, a large majority of the world's nations had been colonized by Europeans at some point. The concept of colonialism is closely linked to that of imperialism, which is the policy and efforts of using power and influence to control another nation or people that underlies colonialism. He's saying that this concept of subjugating another nation and conquering and exploiting is heroic. This is what he's saying.
Subjugation. Yeah.
Right.
Subjugation is heroic.
Mm.
Yeah. Here, let me add something. So this is an article that I found in the Guardian. And so his claim, right, is that these things were good. They were, they were noble. And so again, the Guardian, right, this, I'm sure that, some would agree or disagree with their stance, but read this title. European colonialization of Americans killed so many that it cooled Earth's climate. So the research finds the killing of Native people indirectly contributed to a cooler period, causing deaths of around 56 million by 1600. And so the European colonialization of the Americas resulted in the killing of so many Native people that it transformed the environment, in the Earth's environment, not a regional climate, full Earth environmental change. So the Earth's climate to cool down, new research has found. And it cites this article, so you can go and find it. Here's the review, 2019, 207. And here's, so you can look at this. And this is from a purely scientific. So the way this article reads is they just call it like a great dying there. So it's not political or it's not looking to aim or put any blame. So they just say the mass dying of the indigenous population. So there's no overtones of racialization, any of that kind of stuff. It doesn't really. It's just looking purely at the facts.
But I need to know how that's heroic, though.
It's
Where's
heroic.
the nobility in killing 56 million humans?
Right, and that's the point.
I remember I was on Vocab Malone's channel with Adam Coleman, and we were going in on Confederate history. And you just had people in the chat talking about how brave these Confederates were.
Mm.
And I remember Adam pointing out that, when we talk about things like, being heroic or being brave, those things are tied to something good. I mean, now, if we're going to label folks in the Confederacy as brave, I mean, we could also label Osama bin Laden as brave, or Hitler as noble and brave. But for whatever reason, folks balk at the idea of mentioning Hitler and some of these colonizers in the same breath. But I have absolutely no problem doing that.
Let me piggyback on you and let me pick on you a little bit. So check it out. So when it comes to the Mujahideen, right, over there in overseas lands, Afghanistan, and whatever the case is. Y'all remember Sly Stallone in the 80s, Rocky, right?
Yep.
Is my other favorite franchise of his is Rambo. Okay. And if y'all ever seen Rambo 3, our American hero fights on the side of the Mujahideen, right? Which later became Al Qaeda or whatever, something like that, right? I don't know all the history over there, but he's fighting on their side, right? Because the big bad in that movie was the Russians, okay? And of course, it's 80s Cold War, height of the Cold War. Always the Russians are always the bad guys, right? But that's the thing that you have to kind of pay attention to. It just depends on who you're talking to and what particular time frame, right? One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, right? The U.S. patriots, including George Washington, would have been looked at as terrorists across the pond, right? Here we go. Right now we have to look at a bigger picture. Is this thing that they're doing, killing people, a good thing? No, you know what I'm saying? So you don't get to just say, oh, these are heroes and those are not heroes. Like Matt Walsh can't say that, right? These are heroes because they murdered a bunch of people who were living their life, right? He'll go on to say it. I don't know if we got that far in the video yet, but about how far technologically speaking they were, right? And we're gonna get there. But my goodness, you know what I mean? At what point do you get the right? Do I get the right to come into your house and be like, you know what, Phil, you're not using this garage space real good, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that from you, bro. I got a better car than you do, so I'm gonna put my car.
Right.
Well, that's why they had to implement all these other. You had the racist scientism, right?
Yeah,
and you had the perversion of scripture and all these weird different ideologies to help promote and to pacify that guilty feeling of taking someone else's land. You needed all those things in concert. And here's another thing, right? So he says colonialism was good. Then why did the 13 colonies revolt against British rule?
Right.
Forget the natives. Forget them.
Right.
The other white folk didn't like it.
Yeah.
They didn't like being colonized.
Yeah.
So when was it ever good for anyone?
Yeah. No, I mean that's a good point, Alfredo, because the thing is when you read the Declaration of Independence, right? There's all these there's the preamble and justifying what, and then they have all these gripes against the king. He taxes us without representation. He's inciting these wars, and he's telling us where we can't go, and he's raising keeping us from trading with other nations. And so you go down all these things, but when it comes down to it, that's the same exact thing that the United States does to other nations. So for this, they do and enact the same exact things that they're griping about. and that's just the cognitive dissonance of the whole nation and how this thing has been set up. It's just ridiculous. So that's the whole point of this thing is I don't like it because I don't like it. And because I'm uncomfortable now, you're bad. And so, and that's just the whole point of it. But we are going to see, and like CMB alluded to, and we'll go back to the video here, is that he's going to now make his justifications as to why these things are okay. Anything else before we move on? Chris, you got anything to add or anything, or BK?
No, I'm good.
Okay. No, I'm good. I'm enjoying the commentary so far. I'm over here kindling my fire.
Nice. All right, MJ, you're driving.
Yeah. All right.
LGBT agenda and gender ideology into Africa and other regions of the world that don't want it. That is a form of ideological colonization, and it's evil. But the colonization that brought Europeans to this part of the world hundreds of years ago, that was good. Not everything that happened during those many centuries was good, obviously. History is not that simple. People can commit evil in the pursuit of a worthwhile goal. That happens all the time. But and nobody would ever say that the conquerors and colonizers of this land were perfect angels. But we should celebrate them, and we should celebrate what they achieved. This was all happening at a time when much of the world was undiscovered, unsettled, uncivilized.
All right, so we should celebrate them and what they achieved by doing evil.
Right.
Like, the means, the ends justifies the means is what I'm getting from this. Like, am I making it too simple now or what?
No, it's real simple. It is simple. It's very simple. To those, I'm sorry, I'm away from my microphone. To those who would say, well, history is complex. Look, Christians, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you people, in the words of Chris Samuel, who have a North Star. I'm talking to you guys. It is simple. It's not complex. Let me tell you something. It's easy to point fingers at the left. And yes, they are engaging in an ideological colonization. But folks like Walsh are also engaging in a idealistic colonization, as well as a material colonization.
Right.
Both of them are foul. You came over here because you wanted resources.
Right.
And you know, let's talk about the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bro.
I'm just saying, what about the technical advantages that other countries, other European countries, did all of the Europe colonize other places? No, not everybody. And they have nice things, right?
Right.
I mean, you don't have to. You can be altruistic. You don't have to be a greedy, lazy, because they were lazy. That's why they had slaves. You don't have to be greedy and lazy and murderous. Oh, I'm gonna be nice. Go ahead.
So he actually admits, right, that there was a dark side to subjugation. So there was a upswing to subjugation.
Right. There's an upside somewhere.
It's an upside. Like, I don't understand.
No, the upside is you get to be my slave. You know,
I get the
you
honor.
get to know the guy's slave.
Great.
You get to be my slave. That's what it says later too.
About a year ago, me, Phil, and Brandon went to a lecture by Mark Charles at the University of Michigan, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. It was hosted by the Dutch? Was it the Dutch?
Yeah,
and
the
who
Dutch
else?
Studies Program.
Yeah, the Dutch Studies Program, and they were really reflecting on. They were reflecting on the at the very least the collateral damage, if outright how problematic it was. Their participation in colonialism was. I mean, so far he keeps making these grandiose, broad stroking comments, and he hasn't substantiated any of them. He just generally has this general sense that colonialism ultimately was this great thing, and the people who did it should be admired. And it wasn't so bad, or or whatever the collateral damage wasn't that bad, or it isn't bad enough to outweigh the benefits of the good, whatever that is. Because again, all this stuff is just nebulous. And so for me, so far, I'm infuriated because I just feel like, man, you're talking about this like it's so cavalierly, like we drinking coffee. Right. Like, do you even know what this was?
Right.
Anyway, that's, to me, it's like, hey, got people who actually, the ancestors of people who actually participated in it, they lamenting while you over there celebrating.
Yeah.
How do we see this so differently? Anyway, go, we can keep going.
Well, I'll say this, man. Apologies in Detroit. People see it differently because, like, the outcome is different. You know, I'm on one side of the thing, and it seems to work in my favor. Oh, this was great. The other side, like I said, my cousin, she married a native Ghanaian, right? So he's from Ghana. They lived here for many years, and then they said, you know what? When they're doing the I can't remember what they called it, but they were accepting people from the diaspora and saying, we'll grant you citizenship, welcome home and all this kind of stuff. They thought about it. She'd visited many times before, and she's like, you know what? I'm willing to go if you are. And they live there now. So they have left from here and gone to Ghana, right? And so it is it's benefited some people in some ways more than it's benefited others. I think all of us on this panel probably came on the short end of the stick of the conversation.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah. No, and I mean, and you're exactly right. And we sort of said that we were sort of alluding to this before the stream started. It's this whole thing where, everyone else is hungry, but because you just ate, you're just going to keep cruising in the car. You're going to wait to stop because it doesn't affect you. It therefore doesn't exist. You know what I mean? So that it's just a lack of seeing others as humans and otherizing, and that's just the problem. Is the whole series of the roots of racism is trying to expose the how baked in otherizing the indigenous communities throughout the world, including indigenous African communities as well. Because and for some reason we sort of take that out of our head, is we don't realize or we don't think of Africans being indigenous. We think of them being African, right? But they were indigenous to that continent as well. So they were victimized just as much as the indigenous people were here, and we can even say they were probably victimized even worse because they were transported, kidnapped, right? Kidnapped, taken outside of their will. And so we need to think of it in those contexts and understand these things, because it is so ingrained and baked in. And that's why I want, and with the encouragement of many on this panel, Phil, you got to talk about this stuff because it's important. And this is exactly why, because the otherizing of people is so prevalent in this United States, and more importantly, all other colonized countries. Because the otherizing of indigenous people is a massive problem, and this is a direct result of that ideology, is because he can so flippantly say it because it doesn't affect him. It doesn't affect his lineage. He doesn't come from that. So the man is not hungry because he got to eat. But there are so many that are in poverty that are in that analogy even works in the reality. We have so much poverty in our communities that we have come from, right? I have entered the middle class, but where I've come from is absolute poverty, right? Fixed incomes. I don't know how in the world my grandmother did it on her $500 a month fixed income, being able to support me and half of my basketball team growing up in high school, where I got my shoes from, where I got, any of my equipment, let alone clothes, and then filling up a propane tank because we're in the middle of North Dakota, where it's minus several degrees for most of the winter. But yet he doesn't see it because, and I don't know what his background is, and I'm not going to make but most people have that advantage of understanding how to eat, just something as simple as understanding and knowing how to manage money. We are not taught that on the reservation. We don't even know the first thing about that. Most people don't own their homes on the reservation. Most people don't own businesses. I never knew anyone who owned a business growing up, let alone having, actually owning their car. So because he's not hungry, it doesn't affect him. So he ain't going to pull over. He ain't going to think of others. He's not looking to see what the needs are for the other communities. So anyway, off my soapbox. Sorry, y'all. But But here we go. So back to this. Anything else before we move on?
No, I'm just saying, I'm glad that he does admit that in some twisted way he has benefited because of slavery. Because when we start talking reparations, I just want him to remember that he did benefit.
Right.
All right. I guess I need to press play. My bad.
And it fell to brave and determined men, most of them living, of course, long before George Washington, to get into ships and sail into unknown sea to discover unknown lands. And then to those after them, men and women, just as brave, to settle that wilderness and spread civilization.
You don't discover already inhabited lands.
Stole his thunder.
I think we was all waiting for that one.
I'm sorry. You come to my house, but you discovered it. You might get a hollow point put in.
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm sorry. You might.
What we've all been waiting for.
You might catch some hot stuff in your chest. I'm about
Looking
to.
for some hot stuff.
like Dave Chappelle when he went into the shop. This will just pepper him up real nice.
Pepper.
Oh man, like listen, and shameless plug, man. So shout out to BK Apologist, man. This my brother's Fearless. Phil Fox and I were on his show, and it took a religious spin to it, guys. But we did talk about something, and we looked at some documents and studies based on writings from the 1800s, and people viewed the land as being empty.
Yep.
Like vacant. These are words we're quoting here. Unoccupied. Right? Mind you, they killed off 50-some million people at least that we know of. Right?
Estimates, yeah.
At bare minimum is 50-some million, probably more. Yeah. Right? But the land is empty. It's unoccupied. It is previously unoccupied. Seriously?
Right.
Well, I mean, they tried their hardest to empty it.
Right.
But it wasn't empty when they first showed up.
Right. No. No, I mean, and that's serious. I mean, because I showed in the Doctrine of Discovery video, so you can go back and check it out. So I borrowed some stuff actually from Mark Charles, and he let me share this slide. I don't have it up, but anyway, so he makes a conservative number, and we just seen per the article, so 56 million people. But according to the United States Census, MJ's got to go soon here. But in the 1900, according to the United States Census, there was only roughly 250,000 Native Americans still in existence. And so you take that from 56 million people, that's just a fraction of people left. And that's not even 10% of people left over. And so these types of things this is where it meets the road. And I meant to pull it up, but this does have real life today effects. There are some real life today effects. One of the tribes that I am, I'm part of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara people. So those are 3 separate tribes. But back in 2016, the Mandan people lost their last fluent speaker of their language. Direct result of the extermination. Because the Mandan people were hit with many Native people would argue that the United States was using biological warfare and using smallpox to wipe us out. And so my Mandan tribe lost 93% of their population in the mid to late 1800s.
Wow.
And a direct result of that is them losing their last fluent speakers. They are going to lose their language as of 2016.
Wow.
So imagine an entire language going extinct directly because of the greatness that you have come and brought to this country.
Mm.
So those are real life effects. Those impact real people in this time today. So greatness, gotta do better, Matt.
Like MJ said, grateful who? Grateful
Right.
who?
No. Anything else?
I mean, same thing with me, Phil. I mean, you know, we go back and forth, you know, behind the scenes. We're like, you know, we're fellow tribesmen. You know what I mean? It's like, and unfortunately, we do share the same misery as well. You know,
Right.
our language, the Taino language, is pretty much gone. There's a few words that still survive within the Spanish lexicon, but it's pretty much a lost language as well. In fact, most scholars of Borican studies, what they argue is how much of a genocide did it actually occur? Was it a total, or was it almost everybody? You know what I mean? So, like, you're not. It's hard to find a direct descendant of the Taino people in my island because of colonialism. You know what I mean, it's hard to find that. You know what I mean? So that's why most of us are a mixture of Spaniard and African. You know, so yeah, our culture was definitely rocked by, you know, the brave men who came
Right.
across in those ships. You know, allegedly, quote
Right.
unquote, heroic.
Those brave men.
Those brave men.
Those
You know what I
brave
mean?
men
So
who
brave men bearing gifts
right.
that you
I
can't
feel
give
you, bro.
back.
I feel you.
Disease and
syphilis and
right.
common
Right.
cold.
All right. So
All right.
let's keep it going.
They had every right to do it, according to the law of conquest, which was the law that governed the entire globe, and the law that every native tribe lived and killed and died by. Despite what you may be told, a scattered assortment of primitive tribes did not own this entire hemisphere. These tribes, which were about 3,000 years behind much of the rest of the world, if not 4,000 years, did not have some kind of divine right to keep this entire half of the globe to themselves for.
But they did. But they had divine right.
Right.
They did.
That's my question is where is this law of conquest? Like, where exactly is that written? Because Walsh is a Catholic, so he, if I understand that correctly, if he's a Catholic, as it states on his as it says on Wikipedia, then shouldn't he be drawing his ethics from the Bible? Like, where in the world is this law of conquest notion comes from? Is this just a deduction that he's making? And if that's the case, like, even if you're not a Christian, I'm still curious where he grounds this notion that this law of conquest is this or this might makes right is this ethical or proper way of going about these things.
Right.
So anyway, quick point.
And I love how he says that how these 56 million people are a scattering of tribes.
Right.
56
scattering.
million.
Yeah, just a few here, a few there, you know.
Yeah.
But 56 million, bro. Like,
but let me say this too, right? Look. Sound like a dog.
Yeah, it's not stupid dogs. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. First and foremost, they did believe in property rights, right? Because you got a lot of works coming from the Enlightenment from guys like John Locke, things like that. Now, what has to happen, right, in terms of property rights for John Locke? David Hume was a racist, so he didn't believe that these African and basically non-white people, Africans and people, indigenous people were, possessed any inherent rights. For Kant, he didn't believe that anybody other than white Europeans were rational. So what that allowed for is for them to arbitrarily apply the quote unquote universal ethics, which they said that they discovered by logic and reason, right? But what we're seeing here is, in order for them to be able to take land, and this flies in the face of what Walsh is saying, they had to dehumanize.
Right.
They had to dehumanize the indigenous peoples in order to do what they did. Then, he doesn't talk about all these broken treaties,
Right.
all these social contracts that were broken. Look, I don't expect him to talk about it. I don't expect anybody like him. I really haven't met anybody on the right that goes this deep into history to talk about all of the broken treaties. I'm sorry. We could talk about the left. I agree with my African brothers and sisters in Africa. Look, when they say, well, look, we don't want what the left is pushing, but we don't want you folks on the right coming over here taking out our leaders every time you want a regime change and trying to steal our resources either. We don't want none of that.
Right.
No.
He said something I thought was terribly ironic. He said that the people over here, the indigenous people, did not own the land, right? And so the funny thing is, now the United States is considered a sovereign nation, and they do own the land, don't they? Right? If I go back behind the fence in the backyard, that's land that we own. So,
how convenient that is.
Right.
Right.
We should go back to this this law where this might makes right way. Let's see who owns the land then if he likes it.
Yeah, he ain't gonna like that too much. But that's the thing. It's like it is so backwards, and like this logic. That's what I was saying from the beginning, guys. When we were talking about this, like the argumentation and the logic that he is trying to bolster this, it doesn't make sense and it doesn't hold water. And for someone that is used to, or I've only real exposure I've had to him really in any meaningful way was that what is a woman whole debacle there. He seemed to make sense, and he seemed to come from a place of let's get down to the nitty gritty of what's grounded in reality, and this just isn't.
Right.
Like it's just not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely steeped in American exceptionalism, and and I would argue too. My sis Mary Myers, how we actually were mutual friends with Mark Charles, and so what I would argue as well, sis, is that he may not even realize it, but I think that's where he's getting this idea of the law of conquest, which is essentially the doctrine of discovery. And so there's the discovery doctrine is all through you look at all the beginning constitutions, even down to the state constitutions of many of the 13 states, the colonies, and you look at how when they wrote it, even before it was actually the Constitution was taken over by the United States, because there was no Constitution yet. So each state was tasked with writing their own Constitution, and all through each and every one of their documents, there's elements of discovery in there, and property rights and those types of things. So I would argue that although they didn't have the term doctrine of discovery yet, they were definitely understood the core tenets of discovery and how that whole thing worked. So that's what I would argue. And of course, he might not call it the doctrine of discovery, but he's definitely influenced by that. So anyway, MJ, last couple things, and then we'll try to get this wrapped up, because I know you got to take off, and also I don't want to beat a dead horse as well.
Okay.
So we'll finish this out.
3 minutes left.
Let's go.
All right.
Forever. They conquered whatever land they occupied, conquered it by brutality and bloodshed every time. And then they claimed thousands of square miles of wilderness as their own, even though they weren't using almost any of it and couldn't defend almost any of it. And so a far more advanced civilization came along and claimed it. That's the way of the world.
Real quick,
Except
they
And
for
it's
weren't,
good
they
that
weren't
it happened.
using it.
What was the other option anyway? I mean, let's imagine history the way that these leftist idiots think that it ought to have played out. The early explorers came to the Americas. They find primitive people living here. Then they go home and say, never mind, guys, call off the whole age of discovery thing. That entire part of the earth is owned by people who haven't discovered the wheel yet. It's all theirs. The whole thing. We can't go there. What happens next? The tide of civilization comes to a crashing halt and the earth forever remains divided by some kind of time warp where one half of it lives 3,000 years in the past? Forget about how absurdly impossible such a scenario is. Would it even be preferable if it could have happened? I mean, it could not have happened. It could not have happened that way. It just couldn't. But even if it could have, would it have been preferable? Would that have been a better thing? Obviously not. If this land had never been colonized and conquered, forget about the technological advancements that never would have been made. Certainly never would have happened here and possibly never developed at all. Forget about the absence of modern medicine. Forget about the fact that people would still be dying by diseases that don't even put us out of work these days. Consider that instead that slavery would still exist here, just as it always did among native tribes. It still would. There would still be slavery across this entire hemisphere. There would still be constant warfare where defeated combatants were tortured and killed. Women were captured as sex slaves. Children were either killed or kidnapped, just as was routine among native tribes. There would certainly be no human rights here, no democracy, none of that. Now, I'm not saying that the early settlers came here to spread democracy, obviously. I'm saying that the people who lament the settling of this land are lamenting the existence of everything they pretend to cherish. They are pining for a version of this part of the world where nothing that they value or pretend to value exists. And that is why they, the anti-colonialists, are once again today canceled. That'll do it for this portion of the show. As we move over to the members block. Hope to see you there. You can become a member and use code Walsh.
All right. So I'm just going to say it. This man is spouting nothing but white supremacy. His last statements, his broad brushing statements about how Native Americans operated, I mean, it shows that this man knows absolutely nothing about the culture, but yet he makes these broad brush statements about raping and pillaging and sex slaves and all that kind of stuff. Were we warring with each other? Absolutely. No, there's no denying it. But the thing is that it wasn't simply out of greed or conquest. That's a different animal. Because when you're fighting for survival, there's a difference than just fighting for greed. And so, thanks a lot, MJ, for hanging out with us, brother. I know he had to go and he can't hear this, but he might hear it later on. But that's the thing is that it just boils down to that he is with this particular subject, he's spouting white supremacist ideology. And it is sad to see in that he would make such broad statements about these types of things when and I think he even said it in the conversation that history is more complicated. And it is more complicated. It definitely is more complicated than that. But in his blinders on, he is just purely spouting this stuff and just making broad assumptions without truly understanding what he's talking about to make a political point. And so I also want to add that layer to it because, again, he is a right-wing political pundit. His job is to create a narrative, and his job is also to create pub for Daily Wire. So I'm taking it with a grain of salt, but it's not him that I'm worried about. It's all the right-wing crazies, as well as the left-wing crazies. This isn't partisan. This channel is not partisan. The left can get it too. The left are just as crazy. But the fact of the matter is that, so we're dealing with Matt Walsh today. He's a right-wing pundit. He's a right-wing commentator. And this is dangerous Because this ideology is how you get stuff like January 6th. This is how you get bombings of mosques and those types of things. This is how you get people calling you a prairie nigger. This is how you get, even to this day, the Billings Gazette in Montana is looking at how high school kids are being racialized and how they're not treated fairly simply because they're Native American. Children are being marginalized today. And it's documented. They can't get a fair shake when it comes to, because of their style of play. It's more crazy. It's a different run and gun style. So therefore, of course, fouls and things are going to rack up. No, it's because it's clear to see. It's been clear, and people have been saying it for ages. When I was playing basketball at the turn of the century in 2000, 2002 is when I graduated. When I was playing basketball in those games, high school sanctioned games, in the middle of the game, being called prairie nigger, being called, "What's up, chief?" All these types of things. Savage. It's there. And I was part of I was the manager of the girls' high school basketball team where our team walked off the floor because it was so bad. Children can't even get a fair shake. But Matt Walsh is spouting this stuff, and it has real life implications. How much so? There's real life effects. Stuff like this. This movement has changed because we thought it was just the women. But now this movement has changed to the MMIP, Murdered and Missing Indigenous People. Because what we found is we thought it was just Native American women and Indigenous women that were having trouble getting their cases looked at. But now it's just natives in general. As of 2016, I shared some of these statistics with you, so I'm not going to go too crazy with this, but reported more than 2,700 or 5,700. Only 16 cases have been reported to the U.S. Department of Justice. Astounding statistics. 4 out of 5 indigenous women have experienced violence. 84.3%. Real life. But yet, this was a good thing. It was a good thing. Department of Interior. I mean, I've shared this enough times. Reservation systems. I'm not going to go through all this here. Reservation systems. So were they, in their impacts, were they meant to protect or to oppress? Past the Indian creating the reservation system, okay, the government forces Native American peoples to move and to live on reservations where they could better subdue them, to make sure they were basically just corrals for Native Americans, to make sure that they couldn't get away. Personal tribal identity, we've already covered that. Broken familiar and community relationships, boarding schools. Great. Loss of customs and traditions, near loss of indigenous languages, just covered that. Extreme poverty. Extreme poverty. There's reservations even now with no electricity, no running water, especially down south. Forget trying to find a house on the res. There's no infrastructure. We talked about MJ and I were on, and we talked about the jobs and the education a couple weeks ago with Ellie Beth Stuckey. We have high rates of heart disease and poor nutrition, and part of that is because we've been moved out of the way. So it's extremely expensive for us to get any kind of meaningful, let alone healthy food. So we have to have the stuff that can stay on your shelf for years and years and years. So all the preservatives and stuff that are in them, that's the stuff we're consuming because we don't have the funds to go to the market every day. Because on my reservation where I grew up, I had to travel 3 hours to get to a box store like Walmart or Target. That's how long I had to travel just to get to a Walmart or Target. So we got all these things based upon the reservation system. So it wasn't meant to protect, it was meant to oppress. So here's some statistics. Whoops. So poverty, 28%. So the income was reported at $37,000 a year, while the national average is 56. So I mean, way below. So I mean, this is, and again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I mean, this is some of the stuff that these are direct results of why and people don't care, because you dehumanize someone to a point to where you just don't care anymore. You marginalize a group till you just don't care anymore, and it stops mattering to care. Right? It just becomes ingrained in who you are and your worldview. And that's scary because, and then the reason why it's even more scary is because our right-winged, conservative, Christian brothers and sisters are consuming this garbage with spoonfuls and ladlefuls of content.
It's crazy. So a few things. So he says that colonialism helped to obliterate slavery in the Western Hemisphere. So what was the 400 years of chattel slavery then? What was that? What was that? What was that?
Exactly.
It helped create it. It helped create the problem that it finger quote solved.
And then also,
Right.
then he brings up the thing about the technology and the civilization, as if you guys birthed civilization to begin with.
Right.
As if technology wasn't given to you. You know what I mean? It's like irrigation systems, writing systems, governance. All that didn't happen in Europe, fam.
Right.
That's the ancient Near East. That's Mesopotamia. That's Africa. That's black and brown folk.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't know what vegetables were until you ran up and met some natives. You didn't know what corn was. Stop playing.
Right.
Stop playing. But you guys had technology. You know, and then So actually, I'll stop right there.
I'll just piggyback real quick. I know we don't want to stay here all night, but my goodness, like the idea that this civilization came, right? The indigenous peoples had a civilization. It wasn't yours.
Right.
Right.
Facts.
They had their own civilization. Right. Am I right? You know,
right.
It was not the same thing as what you thought it looked like, or should look like, or, why would you walk around in 3-piece suits in 90-degree weather when you didn't have to?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Like,
exactly.
this is like, I don't know, man. I just, where'd the logic go? That's what I want to know.
Not here. Not in that video.
Right.
As the prophet Isaiah, the prophet Malachi says, and later prophet Malachi echoes, "Woe to those that call evil good." I mean, he talked about a very serious, gravitous issue like it was drinking water, and he's just dismissive of all of the negative connotations of it, with under this kind of utilitarian assumption that things are better now, and it justifies anything that all of this evil, because things are so good now, and he can't even substantiate that. All he can do is speculate. And one of the other clips from the video that was circulating on Twitter, he starts talking about time travel and what it coulda, shoulda. So for me, again, if he's genuinely a Catholic, if he's genuinely a Christian, and he takes his Christian convictions seriously, I just don't understand how he can come to the conclusions that he's come to today to make these commentaries, other than the fact that he's blinded by his political allegiance to American values. That's, and certainly not an allegiance to Christ, because one survey of New Testament theology and the things that Jesus said, such as in Matthew 25, and I just think that you'd struggle to come to the conclusions that he's espousing in this video here. Secondly, if he genuinely believes that might is right, then might was right then why isn't it right today? What's the difference between yesterday and today?
Right.
And why isn't it that China or Russia or some other enemy of the U.S. can't just carry might and colonialize and subjugate us? Why wouldn't that be right? Either that's wrong, it was wrong now, and it was wrong then, or it was never right. I mean, it was what I just said. It was wrong. It's wrong now, and it was wrong then, or it was right then, and then you have to justify what's the difference between then and now, and why it's not right today. But ultimately, as a Christian, I look at these things through the lens of Scripture, and it's heartbreaking to frustrating listening to this guy talk about these things under the guise of virtue. That's ridiculous. That's crazy.
Right.
No. Right.
So I'll finish with this. So for those who are in the chat, many of you know that the gentlemen on these panels, we call ourselves urban apologists, right? And what we try to do is to defend and articulate the faith against heresies that usually target black and brown people, right? And as much as we are against a lot of the doctrines of many of the Hebrew Israelites and the conscious community, we also have to recognize that these things, though they are off, they're responding to something that's very real. Okay?
Yeah.
They are responding to something very real. And I just want to say that we see what they see. We see the injustice. We see how horrible these things have been done to black and brown. We see the same things you guys see. You're not crazy. Now, how you go about dealing with it, we believe is incorrect. That's where we definitely differ. But don't for a minute think that we don't see it and that it doesn't affect us too. We agree with you that there's travesty and there's horrible things that's being done to other imagers of God on a regular basis. But what we believe, the answer is the gospel. The answer isn't to do what they did to us.
Yeah.
Because all you gotta do is put a beard and some fringes on Walsh, and he sounds like Sakari.
Right.
Facts.
Right? Same rhetoric, same talking points.
Mm-hmm.
And for many people, they believe that the answer to white supremacy is black supremacy.
Yeah.
So don't get it twisted from when you hear us talking to what we're talking right now. We do agree that there is injustice. Where we disagree is how we deal with the injustice. We believe that it needs to be put at the foot of the cross. That's what we believe.
Amen.
I just want to put that out there.
Amen. And yeah, so we'll close it out with that. But before we go, I just want to thank you guys for hanging out with us. BK, Detroit, CMB. I appreciate you guys always.
My pleasure.
And thanks for hanging out. BK, you got anything brewing? What you guys got? We'll close out with our last what we got going. and then we'll close out the rest of the show. So, BK Apologist, what do you got going?
Yes, sir. This Monday I have a show talking about the differences between Ishtar, Easter, Estore, and all that stuff, and how none of that's connected to nobody. So,
Wow,
we'll be discussing that Monday.
Noise.
Yeah.
Apologist in Detroit, what you got, brother?
Man, my schedule's been crazy busy. It's finally slowing down, and I'm going to get the opportunity to, work on some shows. I want to work on the show on human flourishing, kind of sketching that out a little bit better. And I'm a partner with BK to do that if he'll have me.
Of course.
And then I'm working on another show, kind of one that we did in the past. The people have gotten money. We did one in the past. I think I want to kind of revise that and update it because I've been doing some reading that, and I think that I can sketch it out a little bit better. So do that with you.
Yeah, come on.
And
Part two.
yeah, me and Matthew have been trying to be a little bit more active on our station doing Freestyle Fridays. So we're getting a little more consistent with that. We got some stuff. There was this Monique Toussaint and I forget the other girl. She's a Hispanic girl. Did this video, and it's a short video, but it's like man, they be doing some chaos in like 10-minute videos. It'd be a hot mess. Anyway, we're gonna Freestyle Friday that video coming up real soon, and then I got a blog that's going to be dropping on Hebrew Israelism on Vocab Malone's blog as a guest writer, probably in the next few days because we were talking about it yesterday, and I dropped it. I sent it to him about 2 weeks ago. So yeah, that, and then I am an evangelist. I mean, I'm a missionary, so I'm always in the streets here in Detroit. So I was mentioned earlier, man. First time I ever got into an apologetic discussion with some more scientists / comedics. So that was interesting this morning. So yeah, that's what I got going now.
Sweet. CMB.
What's up, man? Thanks again for having us on the show. And real quick, I just want to do a quick shameless plug for Apologists in Detroit and MJ. Man, that last show they did with Dr. Pritchett was fire. You gotta go check that out on MJ's channel. But yes, for me, I'm taking this week off as well. I do have a YouTube show that we've been covering a verse by verse study through the book of Hebrews. So it's been pretty dope. And especially this time of the year as we're celebrating Holy Week coming up here, coming up to Resurrection Sunday. Listen, man, the book of Hebrews is chock full of imagery and allusions and direct quotations of the Old Testament, and looking at how Christ himself fits all those narratives. And when Jesus came and said, the volume of the book, come in the volume of the book, and all those passages in the Old Testament, these are they that speak of me, testify of me. They really do. So we're taking a closer look at that. So I took last week off and then this week off, and so we'll be back on the 14th live. Okay, so that give you plenty of time to catch up. Back to Bible Basics, season 2, and so we'll be going through. I think episode 9. I think we're up to on season 2 here. So it's been fire. All these panelists, great panelists, have joined me at least once, I think. Right.
Yep.
So so it's been amazing as far as that goes. So this week I'm chilling with the family, spending some time with the people. But on the 14th, Thursday night, 9:35 p.m. Eastern, we'll be back.
Amen. Yeah, it's been a great series, CMB. So shout out to you for all the good work there, and Alfredo too. Don't sleep on Alfredo's "Who Is Your King" series.
Yes.
That's been pretty fire, man.
What is it? Spoiler: Dwight.
Yep, Dwight. He always shows up in every episode.
Dwight is there every episode. As for me, so I've been, as a lot of I've been helping minister alongside Pastor Mike Holloway at Walking on Water Bible Church. I know I'm not officially any kind of co-pastor or any of that kind of stuff, so I'm just coming alongside him, helping out and being there for whatever he needs. So that's been keeping me busy, and then also just doing stuff like this, whenever things come up. I've been guest star on CMB's channel, Alfredo's channel, MJ. I've been involved in some of the violence with Apologists in Detroit and MJ as well, So yeah, I've been, here and there. So I've been busy, but not necessarily just on this channel. But I do have one thing that I was invited to be a guest speaker at Promise Church in Detroit, which is going to be my first speaking engagement outside of church family or any of that kind of stuff, or being live on my channel. So that's going to be on April 7th. So next Friday at 7 p.m. At Promise Church in Detroit. So that's 7307 Livernois.
Look at Phil got an invite to the barbecue, man. Look at
you. Yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped. Also a little nervous because it's been a little while. So I'm I've done some impromptu stand-up stuff in front of of course with at Walking on Water, but it's been a minute since I had to prepare like a sermon or any of that kind of stuff. So
which word did you get?
You be good.
I got the Mark, what is it, 14:30-33, the my God, why hast thou forsaken me passage.
Psalm 20, what's that, Psalm 22?
22, yep.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Oh,
Psalm 22,
goodness.
yep.
Oh,
That's
man,
right.
crucial.
Yep. So so I he sort of gave me two passages to pick from, so I was like, I might as well take a challenge. So
that's my buddy Eddie pointed out this to me, and it was like a revelation a couple years back. He's like, think about this: Jesus is on the cross, and he starts singing a song.
Right. Boom.
Bad.
Yeah. Right. That's wild, man. So yeah. So keep us in prayer, folks. You know what I mean? I know that some of you said you're praying for all of us and stuff. So I appreciate that. But we're all involved in our own ministries outside of this, the YouTube streets, so keep us in your prayers, keep us in your thoughts, and open your Bible and study apologetics. That's the best apologetic study that you can. Oops, is reading the is reading your Bible. So read your Bible, because that's the best apologetic that you could have, is understanding the truth, and you'll have a better way to see the untruth. Amen. So with that, BK apologist in Detroit, CMB the ambassador, Mr. Phil Fox. We'll catch you later.
Peace.
The things that I've been things that I've